Follow us on Twitter at ghettoplex_mp4, on Instagram at ghettoplex.mp4, and on YouTube at ghettoplex. Conclave is a mystery thriller that has to do with inclusivity. This is 2024. We already have enough movies that portray Catholics as corrupt villains. This movie has a little bit of a twist on it, I guess. It's got the twist of it is that it's like the game Clue. Who done it? And it kind of just furthers my belief into the broken cross conspiracy theory. That's something that deserves its own video. But it definitely feels like the remnants of that book trickle into this film. The book is a warning. This film is, I would say, a little bit of the outcome. Anyways, we have this Cardinal Lawrence who is tasked with running the conclave to select the next pope after their previous pope died mysteriously to some of a heart attack. And there are competing parties for the new position of the pope. Bellini is this liberal left-wing cardinal whose primary goal is ideology over the religion. So he very much wants to change Catholicism into the route that it's been currently changing in with the previous pope, leaving away from its traditional roots. And then we have Tedesco, who is a very traditional Catholic. He understands that it's important for the religion to remain homogeneous in order for it to survive, especially with them having terrorist attacks happening even during the conclave. He's the one person who seems to really care about the survival of the actual Catholic Church, its order, its tradition, its history. He's the only person who's really seems to want to restore the religion. In the film, even though he's the person who makes the most sense, he is the bad guy. They make him the bad guy of the film. The guy who wants to save his religion is the bad guy. And he's also, even right after the terrorist attack, and he says, look, this multiculturalism experiment is not working. We welcome them here. They don't respect us, and they terrorize us. And everyone's like, oh my God, you're so bad for not liking the terrorists who just bombed us as we were trying to decide who our new pope is. See, it's so crazy. The overall moral of the film is that everyone has secrets and everyone sins. And it also has the very nature of power, which is when an opportunity opens up and several parties are involved, there's going to be competition for who takes control of any institution. It's not just a religious thing. The film may try to put it out to be a religious thing, but it doesn't matter. In any situation where there are several parties involved, if there is one leader and the leader then needs to be replaced by a member of any of those several parties of people, it's going to be competitive. That's just the nature of man. Oh, by the way, the new pope they elect is an intersex person. This is supposed to be like the really big twist. But at this point, it doesn't even really seem that surprising. I guess it's also supposed to be insulting to Catholics. I'm Catholic, and I already had an idea of how the film was going to end because Mary Morgan from Pop Culture Crisis had discussed the book. She was already pretty pissed about the movie, even though she hasn't seen it, which, she has no reason to. She was pretty much right. But in the film, when they introduced this character, you already know, oh, this guy is going to be the one to be elected the new pope because of his very specific entrance and his very unique backstory that is a mystery until the very end of the film. And he's also the one who has this very inclusive point of view when it comes to the church. I think if anything, this film just illustrates how when you don't respect the tradition and the reason for your tradition, eventually over time it's going to wither and die and turn into something that it was never meant to be. But yeah, so this film basically is not worth watching. It's not the worst thing I've ever seen, but it's also not surprising. There was like I said, I knew how the film was going to end, but the way they introduced characters, it made it even more predictable about who was going to be painted as what they were portrayed as. One last thing, it also reminded me of a recent clip I've seen of Mel Gibson talking about how he believes the church has been corrupted from within, which also just further fuels my belief in the broken cross theory.
Crying out from the wilderness of Malibu to lend that voice for your support and encouragement at your rally today. The Coalition for Canceled Priests. I mean, it's not hard to believe that there is now such a thing, as personally I know many priests who have been canceled. But not for the reasons you'd think. I mean, it's not like they did a hit-and-run drive and left the scene of the crime, or embezzled church funds, stole the altar wine, or committed some other heinous crime. No, not at all. And who's persecuting them? Well, their own bishops. How's that? Yep. Who are they? Well, they're a pack of men who generally passively sit by and tolerate any kind of nonsense, but if one of their priests utters something that resembles orthodoxy, well, then they spring into action, they reprimand him, and they bully him and do their best to cancel him. And it succeed. They drum him out of the service, you know. Off he goes. I'm really sorry about that. That's a grave injustice, and it's kind of white martyrdom. And it's nothing new. It really isn't. It's nothing new. And it's a symptom. It's a symptom of a very deep sickness that afflicts the church. It did not happen overnight. If anyone's familiar with the missives of Archbishop Vigano, he says that the seeds of erosion of the church were sown with the reforms of Vatican II, and I agree with him. He suggests even that we scrap the whole thing and go back and do it the way it was before. And it was a pastoral council, after all. I mean, there was nothing wrong. It didn't need to be fixed. They were doing pretty well. At any rate, and I've had my own run-in with the bishops. I mean, who are they? Well, I remember when I directed The Passion, I went to the USCCB to get support for the film. And those men couldn't get away from me fast enough. And all but a few of them turned their back on me. And it was pretty telling about who they were. A pretty insipid bunch. And it doesn't look like anything's changed. Geez, I remember back in the 70s, old priests, good priests, who were bullied and persecuted by their bishops. There was a rash of it back then also, and it was because they wanted to maintain what it was that they were ordained to do. They didn't want to go along with the new liturgy and the reforms of Vatican II, and so that they were really heavily leaned on. It was never abrogated, the old Mass, never, and it still hasn't been. You can't. It's protected by quo primum. But they were bullied and badgered and put in insane asylums, and it was pretty sad to watch. And this kind of thing is now happening again. So, and how are we supposed to know the good guys from the bad guys? Well, we were given a standard by which to judge them. By their fruits, you'll know them. By their fruits. Anybody seen any good fruit lately? Well, it's tough. And look, I'm a pretty sinful guy. I mean, I'm as venal as the next guy. But I know the difference between a shepherd and a hireling. And I think that the vast majority of these bishops are just a bunch of hirelings. And my question is, who's hiring them? I don't think it's Jesus. Is it Francis? Who's hiring Francis? Is it Pachamama? I mean, I think you need to look at the whole institution. And, I'll quote Archbishop Vigano again in saying that he believes that there was a parallel counterfeit church set up to eclipse the real one. He's suggesting usurpation or an inside. There was a parallel counterfeit church set up to eclipse the real one. He's suggesting usurpation or an inside job. It seems that way. Anyway, of course we know the gates of hell will not prevail against it. The victory is God's, not ours. And it will flourish if we keep it in our hearts. It can flourish in our hearts and keep the faith. And that's what's going to happen. That's what I encourage you to do. Again, I'm sorry for your pain, the injustice. I'll definitely throw something in the hat to add my support. And God keep you and God bless you. Thank you.
Anyways, are you Catholic? Did you watch this movie? What did you think of it? Let me know in the comments below. Follow us on Twitter at ghettoplex_mp4, on Instagram at ghettoplex.mp4, and on YouTube at ghettoplex. See you guys in the next one.